Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Jerry Foster SEMO Music and Art Podcast. Today, my special guest is a longtime friend. We've been playing music together off and on since 1994. He is a drummer extraordinaire. He has played with everybody in Southeast Missouri that I know.
And a few from Arkansas.
He is currently the drummer for the Justin Heskett Band. He was the LB's drummer.
Still am.
When they play. Scruffy group of guys. Anyway, please welcome my guest today, my good friend and brother, Mr. Jamie Hickson. Jamie, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So tell me what's going on. First off, Happy New Year. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. How was Christmas?
It was pretty good, man.
Did Santa bring you everything you wanted?
For the most part.
Did he bring you what you needed?
Yeah.
There was a song one time that said you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you might find you get what you need.
Yep.
It was by a no-name band, Rolling Scones. Strolling Scones.
Strolling clones.
Scrotum cones. All right. So the big thing, tomorrow's New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Who are you playing with? Where are you going to be playing?
Playing with the Justin Heskett Band. We're playing in Ramona, Oklahoma, which is pretty much the middle of nowhere. Not to say that it is nowhere, but you drive, and then you make a right or a left, depending on which highway you are on, and then you're in the middle of nowhere, and there's a casino. We played there a few times. It's a nice place, and they said, "Hey, come play New Year's Eve," and we were like, "Sure." So
very cool. And you said how long of a drive is it?
About 6 hours one way.
And with all the flooding and stuff that's going on, that's going to bring a little bit of adversity to the drive.
Adventure, yeah, to bring some adventure to the drive. Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. It's not really doing anything weather-wise out there right now, so as long as there's not ice and snow and whatever on the road, I've been keeping up with the weather or the highway updates.
Awesome.
And so they're keeping it pretty clear.
So everything should be good. You guys should be safe.
Yeah, it should be fine.
Excellent. Glad you're gigging tomorrow. I got a gig as well with my buddies in Black River Blues. Wanted an extra guitar player, so I'll be doing that.
That's cool.
Hey, for the remainder of this, let's try to use words that start with ADV as often as possible. Because we already had adventure,
adversity,
and adversity. And I just want to advertise that tomorrow's going to...
That I take Advil when I have
Advil. with the advent of Advil, man, headaches have,
evaporated. Wait, no, that's the wrong word.
Taking us on... Oh, you already said adventure. Shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
All
we can reuse them.
Okay.
Maybe it'll make us think of another one. One cool thing about this New Year's Eve, and I was just telling somebody this the other day, this is the first time I can remember in probably a good 5 or 6 years that almost all the musicians I know have a New Year's Eve gig.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, because...
I was a late entry. I didn't think I was going to have one.
Yeah.
I really did not think I was going to have one. So far, like you said, everybody... Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. But that's one thing I started to notice when, most everybody these days seems to be on Facebook, and it's easy to make an event for... Oh, hey, guitar.
Oh,
that guitar.
Falling Telecaster.
Yeah. But, and I started getting these event invitations for New Year's Eve, and I had to decline, it's like, because I'm playing too. And then I was like, oh, that's really cool. That was like, most of the people I know that are in bands are playing, so.
I was just thinking that too. I thought that was really cool, because I thought, all right, well, this year I'll, may not have a gig, but I'll be able to go out and see my buddies.
Yeah.
I may go from one place to the other and try to see all my buddies. And then I got the call to play. Darren sent me it wasn't a call, it was the much more tech savvy, awesome hipster way of sending me a Facebook inbox.
Facebook, yeah.
He's like, "Hey man, what are you doing New Year's Eve?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't have a gig, kind of bummed, but I don't know." He's like, "Well, now you do if you want one." I was like,
Cool.
"Yes, I do. Show me the money. I mean, tell me where it's at." Now I'm looking forward to playing with those guys. I don't get to play with them that often. I don't get to play that kind of music just a whole lot. But let's you all right there?
Yeah, I just hit the edge of the desk.
Yeah, I did that at work a while back, man, and I just now the sore went away. Anyway, so I've known you for 21, soon to be 22 years.
Wow.
That's a mind blower.
Yeah.
Seeing that I just turned 41, I've known you over half of my life. That's cool. Which is one of the great things about me and Roger were talking about this. He was the first guy I did this podcast with, and we were talking about how everybody knows each other around here. I was kind of worried, if I do this podcast, am I going to be able to get people on here,
Sure, yeah.
And it's like, well, who doesn't want to talk about their music? And two, we're all buddies.
Yeah.
It's a tight-knit group, man.
Well, and like you said, most people know each other, especially musicians, because there's a lot of different musicians that you end up playing with. You're not necessarily in a band with them full time, but this gig for you is a perfect example. It's like, hey, we want another guy that can sing and play guitar for this gig, So here's 4 people that you're getting to play a gig with that you may never have gotten to before or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I know we played with Jeff a little bit beforehand, and
I've actually gigged with him.
Yeah, so
once.
Oh, that's right.
I did once.
I forgot about that.
Last year before.
Okay.
2004 summer.
Oh, okay. But it's
but it's not often. It's
and it's funny because you can get to a certain level, like your skill level gets to a certain place where people will call you to come and sit in,
and especially
or to fill in. The fill in is kind of key. I guess that's a key difference. Is when you can just go and fill in with a band, like take the place of another member just for that night, and kind of help things go smoothly.
Yeah, and if you're a drummer like yourself, you can really stay in demand.
Yeah.
If you know your stuff, you gotta practice, gotta hone up on your craft.
Practice? What's that? No.
That's a four-letter word.
Let's see, what is a word to describe not practicing?
That would be an adverb. It's an action. It's an active. You're actively not doing something, right? Wouldn't it be, or would it be
I am not
a verb? It would be a verb.
Verb, yeah. So,
anyway. You are actively not practicing. Now we've got an adverb. We do English lessons here on the podcast. So shit, man, you've been playing. Like, who all have you played with? Because man, I see it all the time. I'll be playing with this person. I'll be playing with this band. Yeah. I want you to tell whoever may be listening who all you played with lately, because I think it's great. Like I said, we've kind of grown up musically, so to speak, a little bit.
Yeah.
We've seen each other through all kinds of droughts and whatever with music and in between. I am personally so glad to see you playing with being in such demand. It does my heart good to see one of my best friends, one of my musical family members, brothers, to get to stay so busy.
Thanks.
When I know it hasn't always been like that.
Yeah, because even if you get to that level, like I was talking about, this area of the country is just such an odd mix when it comes to live music. There'll be dry spells for everybody. It seems like where the clubs aren't really hiring bands.
Well, it's the club to band ratio thing too.
Yeah, that's
clubs are
changed a lot.
Right.
Well, when I very first started playing out, I was still in high school. I was 17, and I was playing in a band with a bunch of guys that were older than me. I think two of them were going to college, and the other 2 had full-time jobs, and then music was what they did in their free time, which basically meant in the evenings and on weekends. And for me, going to school, it was the equivalent of, I've got something I'm doing for 8 hours a day, like a job or whatever, and then my free time was evenings and weekends. So it kind of all worked out schedule wise. But they were all older than me, like I said, and it was an interesting experience because like all I'd ever really done before that is play in the bedroom, set the drums up and put the headphones on, jam to records and the radio. But then I met a kid that played guitar, and then we got together and jammed. And actually, I used to have jams at my house, and it would be like me and two of the horn players from our marching band, because most of us, like there was a core group of people from the marching band that our band teacher drafted into what we called the stage band, and we played at the basketball games. And then in that context, we played a lot of modern rock stuff. We played Huey Lewis and Starship and real upbeat rock tunes with a horn section. And
what did Starship do that was upbeat?
Built this city.
Oh yeah. Man, why did my brain go to Sarah?
Well, that was a big hit for them.
Yeah.
That's a cool band because they've had so many incarnations, and they've changed their name. They've had 3 different names and had even more incarnations and had hits with every one of them.
Yeah.
So
if Ken were here, he'd want to know when the incarnation of the George Jefferson Starship would take place. And
George Jefferson.
He claims that's going to be an all-funk band.
All-funk band.
You know what? The George Jefferson Starship, baby.
That would be cool. I'd play drums for that band.
I would definitely work on my 13ths and 9ths and 7th chords and
there you go.
Chunk along. Hell yeah. So, at what point? Okay, let's say somebody who's trying to break in through music, because I just kind of want to go along with where you were at that time.
Yeah.
And then when you
Yeah.
first started, let's say a kid in 2016.
Yeah.
Is the newest Jamie Hickson. He's in his room beating his drums, beating his skins. He's in there pounding his skins and his. Yeah. There you go.
Anyway.
So he's doing that, and he's playing his drums, and he's like, "Man, I want to break into this thing, but I'm just a kid." Give an idea of what they should be doing.
Move somewhere where there's a real music scene. No, anyway. But I don't know. The real answer is just get out there and network. I mean, I met the kid that played guitar was somebody I knew from school, and even that has changed so much. The way they've cut music programs and things like that in schools, it's sometimes harder to meet people that are creative and do things like that.
And you grew up in Campbell, Missouri, which is a population of what, 1,500?
At the time, it was right around 2,000. It's always hovered around 2,000.
And let's not beat around the bush. It's because all my family is from there. It is a little sort of backwards hick town in the Boot Hill of Missouri.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. That's just that's the location. That's just what it is. And it is what it is. And it's not a slam. It's just that's what it is. It is people. You don't have the accent. Like I was just there for Christmas, last week. My cousins talk like that, and they just sound like they have their mouth half closed when they talk. So talk about cultural droughtage and creativity. But would you say being in a little town like that, and I'm convinced people like yourself, who's into comic books and writing, you're part of a comic book company that does storylines, and you like to draw, and you like, you've been in the stage company, you do theater.
Yeah.
You're born with that. I'm convinced of it. I don't think you're in the womb and you have this checklist of things.
God made me this way, Jerry.
Okay, well, if that's what you want to say, I mean, sure.
I was trying to make a joke of it. Yeah, anyway.
But, okay, God made you creative. And the creator happens to have you in this little town. how do you get that out? Like how do you express yourself in a town that's not
Like
set up
essentially a cultural void.
Yeah,
that's how.
And
I
again,
would
that's not
describe it.
it's not a slam. It's a
No,
blue
but
collar, lots of farmers,
Yeah,
hardworking people.
yeah,
But then you've got this idea, man. I'm artsy. My makeup is not to go out and be a farmer, and that's okay.
yeah.
That's got to be kind of, as a kid, difficult, or do you just find a way to, like, how would you get that out? Because you know me, I can't shut up. I have to talk. I have to express myself.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty good question, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that face that sort of thing, that live in a small town that doesn't really have anything going on for the arts or music or whatever, other than what's going on in school. Didn't cut us off, did you?
Nope.
Okay. And I guess I was pretty fortunate that I had parents who left their small towns. My dad was from Campbell also. Pretty much grew up there, and then
Okay, I didn't know that. I knew your mom was from.
My mom's from West Virginia, and like, talk about a cultural void. I mean, she lived up what they call the holler.
Yeah.
You know, the holler is way back in the woods.
In a thicket.
You know, there's is it Jeff Foxworthy that has the joke about turn off the paved road? You know, you turn off the paved road, and then you turn off the gravel road, and then you're on a dirt road, you know, to get to their place.
And then follow the ruts in the cornfield.
Exactly. Yeah. My grandfather farmed tobacco.
Oh, cool.
And they had a tobacco farm, and all the kids helped, and you know, it's that usual story you hear about. Well, you know, all the way back to the Depression era, even, you know, that children either skipped school sometimes, or even, you know, or came straight home from school and started helping the parents work the land. And
that
things.
would be my dad. My dad was the last 13 kids. No doubt about it. He was born to work. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It was another. I mean, my dad was picking cotton when he was 5. He used to tell me about having his little gunny sack. I try to
say 13 kids.
Yeah,
I think that's how many were in my mom's family.
So, I always try to picture in my mind my little 5-year-old Jerry Senior with his little sack trudging along picking cotton. You know,
it's hard to imagine. And I have a son who's 6. I can't. I mean, he loves to help. You know, if I'm out trying to change a tire, he's out there trying to get the lug wrench and help me take the bolts off, or the nuts off and stuff. And so I could kind of imagine him out there picking cotton. You know, because well, we were moving the couch earlier tonight. I want to carry the cushions. You know, and he was jumping right in there, and he's a little guy. Yeah. So I guess it's kind of in some people sometimes, especially if you're born into that situation.
Yeah. So where were we going? You were trying to explain that your mom was from the holler of West Virginia.
Yeah.
Your dad was from Campbell. So how did they go? Okay, we have this son who wants to express himself with music. He's not showing interest in your dad. I know mechanic work, did cars.
Yeah.
I don't know if you showed any interest in that. But
I really didn't. Yeah.
But your dad was also a musician.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's the thing. My mom left home, I think she was just barely 18, and ended up, she had an older brother who traveled around a bit playing music, and he ended up in Indiana. Indiana wasn't very far. It wasn't a long trip from where they lived in West Virginia. They lived on the very western edge of West Virginia.
Okay.
So they're right next to Ohio, and you just go right across Ohio, and there's Indiana. And then, so my dad ended up in Indiana also, and that's how they met. They met in Indiana, and that's where I was born, in Indiana.
How did they settle on Campbell, Missouri?
Well,
who had family here? Somebody had to have had family.
Dad. Yeah, my dad did.
Okay, yeah, you said your dad was born. Okay.
Yeah, he was, I'm trying to remember where he was actually born. But he may have been born in here in Poplar Bluff, like in the old hospital, the old what was Lucy Lee downtown or whatever. You know,
yeah.
I'm not even sure. I know there was.
There was the old Poplar Bluff Hospital.
Poplar Bluff Hospital, that was
the last police station we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
the library is.
But he
or
basically
by the
grew up in
library.
Campbell, and my grandfather played music.
On
and
which side of the family? Your dad's
My
dad?
dad's dad.
And what did he play?
He played guitar. He played saxophone. He sang. He had 2 radio shows back in the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
He played on the radio down in Kennett and Crothersville.
Didn't you have a grandmother that played drums? I could have
Yeah,
swore you had a drum of hers.
I still have it, yeah.
Okay.
I have a snare drum that my grandmother, Hickson, my dad's mom, played when she was in school. And, and then on my mom's side, like I said, her older brother played. 2 of her sisters and her dad had a little gospel trio. My mom can sing. She just never hardly does. I mean, she sings to herself and driving down the street.
But she had no designs of going out and performing.
No, not really. And because there were already a couple of sisters that did that, and I guess it was just a thing. She could sing, and so there's a lot of musicality and talent in both sides of the family. So I came by it naturally, I guess you'd say.
So then, growing up in that little town of Campbell, and they saw that, it was just natural for them to go, "Oh, well, he's going to play music." They didn't shun it.
No, not at all.
What about when you showed interest in that? You wanted to do more than just beat around in the house, and then you wanted to get out and play.
They didn't really discourage it by any means. Because they had already kind of experienced that themselves. My dad played in high school. He played in a band 4 or 5 nights a week when he was still a senior in high school. And back then there were a lot more places to play, of course. But he would drive to Poplar Bluff a couple nights a week and play, and then drive to Malden, and there were a bunch of different places that were within driving distance. And then he would get up and go to school the next day because he played on like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
Wow.
and then either Sunday or the next Monday and things like that. So there was a lot more music being played because, like I said, my grandfather played a live radio show, and that was really the only way a lot of people heard certain types of music was these radio shows,
So was your first gig out with those high school guys?
No, actually, my first gig out I was probably around 15 years old, and there was somebody that knew my dad that was another musician, my dad's age, had put together a little band for his daughter to sing at some some county fair kind of thing, and I went and played drums for that. I think we played like 3 songs.
How nervous were you?
Not the least bit nervous. And
somebody slip you some
no
Jim Beam. Or
no.
something? Have some of this.
Actually,
kid, you'll play like a pro.
Let me tell you that story. As I said, there's been music in our family, so. At our school, you started in grade school if you wanted to join the orchestra band, and all that, the symphony band or whatever. So you started in 6th grade, I think, 5th or 6th grade. You started fairly early, and so I kind of already knew how to play drums from my dad always having a kit at the house and all that, and being surrounded by it. His bands would rehearse at our house and things. So my mom said, "Well, why don't you learn an instrument that has notes?" And so I was like, okay. And I didn't want to learn piano, and guitar seemed like it was too much at the time. When you're 10 or 11 years old, that seemed, it's kind of intimidating, I guess. So I was like, well, saxophone. I'll learn saxophone. So they found a used saxophone, and I started taking band in I guess 6th grade and learning the notes, and it was one of those.
Did you ever work your way up to yakety sax?
No, I never did.
That sucks, man. Like if I were going to play saxophone,
That'd be the first thing you learned.
That'd be one of them.
Yeah.
There's like signature licks on. Nah, not even that. But there's like signature licks on every instrument.
Yeah.
And one of them I would want to do on the saxophone is that little trill thing.
Yeah. No, I never made it that far.
That's
I was
another one. Yakety yak. I would have to learn that. I'm sorry, man.
No, it's okay.
I'd be double clutching on that motherfucker.
I was a decent sax player, but I wasn't.
Boots
I was,
Randolph.
well, I was never first chair or whatever, but that was okay because I wasn't in it to win it or whatever you want to call
Right.
it.
You knew you wanted to play
I knew
drums.
I wanted to play drums, and
Yeah.
that was there, and all I could do was get better at that, even though I didn't take it in school. And there's there's kind of a funny story about when I was in school. Our band teacher, they ran through a couple of different band teachers as I was growing up and learning how to play the sax, and some of the people that they had as in the drum line or whatever, like a couple played snare, one played bass drum. Back then everybody had their own instrument that they played, whether it was triangle or whatnot. And some of those guys really just didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
even though they were 10 or 12 and 14. So by the time we got to it was the year between.
You know why though, right?
Why?
There's no 14-year-old boy in his right mind thinks he's going to get in some girl. Going to get some pants playing the damn triangle.
Playing the triangle. Well, I guess that's a valid point.
I want to remain a virgin if I keep playing this, Mr. Hicks. Or whatever you're. Mr. Smith, if I play the triangle, I'm never going to get laid.
Yeah. Well, so like I said, and the thing was, at one point, Campbell had a really smoking jazz band way back in the 60s up into the 70s. And then it kind of waned out, and then they just discontinued it. All we had was the symphonic band and the marching band. And so we had a new teacher that came in my 8th grade year, I'm pretty sure. And, I'm getting ready to transition into high school, and she wanted to start a jazz band again. She found out about, hey, Campbell used to have this cool jazz stage band, and she wanted to kind of revive it. And so she starts picking different kids to be in the stage band, the jazz band. And they couldn't find anybody that played drum set, or they couldn't find anybody that played drum set well enough to pull that off. And this is with guys that had been taking, drums as their instrument for 4 or 5 years at this point, So my grandmother, the one that played the drums, she was the secretary to the superintendent at Campbell for many years. And she mentioned to the new band teacher, well, my grandson can play drum set. Won't you try him out? And so she was introduced to me. I mean, she already knew me from band class from that one year. And then she's like, you play drums? I was like, yeah. And so she's like, well bring your kid up here and show me, what you can play.
I just thought you were that lackluster sax player.
Yeah, exactly. And so I did it, and she's like, cool, you're our stage band drummer.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And at
Randolph.
that point, I didn't even really know how to read drum music. And she's like, well, that's not a big deal. She's like, you play well enough now, you'll pick it up. You can listen to the recordings, and I'll guide you through the rest of it. Because like all the stuff, like I said, that we played at the basketball games for the stage band, it was all stuff I was hearing on the radio anyway, so I already knew how to play most of it. And then the jazz stuff, most of what she picked out to play for the jazz band were kind of traditional recordings or compositions, and they had recordings, and so I would just listen to Dave Brubeck or whoever, and then pick up what the shuffle was and things like that. And then I could, once we ran through it 2 or 3 times, I had it.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 4 years. Nobody else came along in those 4 years I was in high school.
No kidding.
To play trap set, so I played the drums in the jazz band.
All right, so let's go ahead and shift, because I've been trying to keep these an hour, and I can't believe we've already went 30 minutes. It's crazy. So by now you're in high school. You've been doing that. What were you listening to rock-wise, and you were like, because you've turned out to be kind of a rock drummer, I guess you would say. I would classify you as a rock drummer.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, you had to have been listening to some fucking Bonham.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's the thing,
okay, when you were, let me rephrase it. When you're in high school playing that, your dream wasn't to be the next Ed Shaughnessy, or was it? Or were you like, man, I want
totally
to be
was.
Peter Criss or whoever?
Peter Criss. as honestly, and what I tell people a lot of times when they ask about my musical history, my first influence was my dad.
Yeah.
Because he played drums.
Same here.
And he was kind of in demand. He played for some of the best bands around the area at that time, and he did fill-ins and things like that. So, in a way, I've kind of followed in his footsteps, I feel like, because I've played for some pretty good bands around here, and and then, been asked to fill in and do that kind of stuff.
So when did the transition from high school jazz player to I'm starting to play clubs kick in? Were you playing, like, I know for me personally, I was playing in bars before I was 21, getting paid.
Yeah, I was
as a paid musician.
Yeah.
How did the transition from high school jazz nerd? I'm kidding. The high school jazz guy.
I was a bit of a nerd.
Man, I was a nerd. There are people that might dispute it, but I think I was a nerd. How did you make the transition into, okay, now I'm playing for money kind of guy? Like, how did that get started?
Well, it kind of happened simultaneously. I need to backtrack because we keep veering off on these little tangents. Let me go back to the thing about being nervous. I talked about that gig when I was 15 or 16. Here's what happened. My very first real gig with the jazz band from Campbell was at a library convention at SEMO up in Cape Girardeau at the college. We learned the tunes. We went up there. We set up, and they brought all the people into this one big room, and like I was so nervous. I didn't know if I was going to be able to play.
Wow.
And that was the one and only time I can ever really remember being nervous on stage, because like it was the first time I'd really played in front of other people. I'd played, I'd jammed at the house in front of my parents or friends and family and things like that. But this was a real audience that didn't know me, and so it kind of put me on edge. Once we made it through like 2 songs, I loosened up and I felt a lot better and played really well for the next, 9 songs or whatever it was. And after that, it wasn't a problem to get up in front of people. It wouldn't matter if it was 6 or 6,000. I could just do it.
You just made that connection in your brain.
Yeah.
Playing is fun, relaxed. Right. Let's
do it. Yeah. Yeah. And so I really, honestly, to this day, I've never really had a attack of the nerves or stage fright or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different things and different ways that it affects some musicians. But it's never really gotten over on me since then.
Worst stage fright I ever had is when we used to play at the coffee house.
Oh,
before we'd play, I would be so nervous.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why. I think I remember even talking to you one time before we played. I was like, dude, I'm just nervous. I don't know why. And I was like, do you ever get nervous? And you're like, nah, not really. And I'm like, you bastard, how do you not do that?
I'm no help. I have no good advice for people that are nervous like that because it's been so long.
I do. Yeah.
What is it?
Okay, we live by Current River, which is a very cold river that everybody floats in the summer. You have to just dive in. You can't wade into Current River because once it hits your nuts, you're going to take off running to the shore.
Yeah.
You have to jump in.
So it's the same thing with playing music.
Same thing with playing music.
Just get up on the stage and do it.
Get up there. Don't think about it. Just rely on some muscle memory at first.
Yeah.
And then you can relax, and then you can start improvising more, and you can have fun. But it's the same thing. You just have to go in, shock yourself initially, and then let the shock wear off as you feel better.
That makes sense.
And it's the same thing. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could see that in the coffee shop because everybody in the audience is 3 feet away from you
and staring right at you.
They're there to hear you.
But at the same time, those are some of my favorite memories of gigs.
Yeah.
Because they were there to hear you.
Yeah.
They weren't there to chase ass. They weren't getting drunk. There was no alcohol.
Yeah.
It wasn't a smoky room.
Yeah.
It was just going in there and really learning how to talk to a crowd and banter with a crowd and to just play.
Yeah.
And you got to play whatever you wanted. Or we did like Playboys in Outer Space. Anyway,
it was our version of CBGB.
Kind of.
I just watched that movie last night.
Cool. So okay, the first The first, gigging band you were in, that was like a legit band. You got together, you rehearsed, da-da-da-da-da. How did you get into that? Did you answer an ad? Were you going out and watching bands play?
I had... I don't remember how I reconnected with my buddy. As I was growing up, like I said, my dad's bands rehearsed at our house, and sometimes the other musicians would bring their wife and kids and things. So I really got to be good friends with Jamie and Greg and Terry and Michelle Yates, all the kids of Alan Yates, a guitar player, singer.
Now, where were they from?
They were from Fisk.
Fisk, okay.
But my dad and Alan played music up in Indiana and Illinois together.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know the full story, or I don't remember the full story of how they met up there, and then found out that they were both from this area. But they played music up north, and then they played music back down here. And the aforementioned really good bands. They always had some good bands around here. Yeah. But they would rehearse at our house, and then they'd bring their kids. And there were times where I would go spend a week with the Yateses, and then
basically
they would come spend a week with us.
You and the Yates kids start your first band.
Well, no, I never played music with them. I just knew them through music, and then through them I knew these two other kids named Chris and Keith Hahn. We know Chris Hahn. Plays bass for Cinderblock. And but his brother Keith was about a year younger than me, played guitar, and somehow I got hooked up with him, and he was a pretty decent guitar player at the time, and so he would come over to my house and we would jam, or I'd go to his house. At this time they lived in Risco, so it wasn't very far to drive for either one of us. And then he's like, "Hey, my brother plays bass," and I was like, "Oh, cool." And so Chris came over to jam with us. And then Chris was like, "Hey, I know this other guitar player." And it was a guy that was older than him even. And so he brought Wayne Stanfield from, most recently from Swamp Whiskey. But I played in a couple different bands with Wayne over the years.
This is all new to me. I never knew this.
Oh, really?
I swear to God.
Oh, wow.
We've never sat down and talked about our musical...
I guess we really haven't, man.
No, that's crazy.
Stay strapped in, folks. This one may go an hour and a half.
That's all right. Hey, however long it takes. Yeah. I may have to pause for station identification and to pay some bills. Oh, wait. I have no sponsors.
No advertising on this podcast.
No, I pay
these Doritos are delicious.
Yeah.
No.
I would say what I'm drinking right now, but since Dr. Pepper doesn't pay me... Oh, wait, I said it anyway. No, okay, so how many gigs did you get to do with the Hahn brothers and Stanfield?
Well, Keith ended up not actually being a part of the band because his skill level wasn't quite there yet. Okay. He was a decent guitar player, but he wasn't to that point.
Was Wayne playing leads at that time?
Oh, Wayne played lead.
So why wasn't Keith just the rhythm dude?
I don't know. I don't really know what happened there.
Did he sing?
No, he didn't
dead
sing.
Weight. Get rid of it. Okay. Dead fucking
no offense,
weight
Keith.
No, you're dead weight, Keith.
We love you, Keith. Well, what happened was they introduced us to another guy, Sean Jordan.
Never heard of him.
You don't know Sean?
Don't know Sean.
He's been in and out of this area for off and on for years.
There's a good chance I may have met him at some point through you, because I've met that's where I first met Greg Yates. He was playing drums.
Right.
I was like, Buddy Holly plays drums. At the time, I thought he looked like Buddy Holly. Now I look more like Buddy Holly.
But Sean was from Clarkton at the time. Mm. Wayne was from Gideon. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, Chris and Keith were from Risco. So, all these towns are just a stone's throw away from each other. So it was...
And full of decent musicians.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this area, me and Roger were talking about that on the very first podcast. At this area, it's like, wow. And I think a lot of it is because we are all from, even Poplar Bluff here, sure, it's 18,000 now.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do here. If you have a hankering to play guitar, which I did, or whatever, there's not a lot of distractions if you don't want there to be.
Oh, true. And especially when we were growing up.
And especially when there was no internet.
There were barely any video games.
I never had an Atari. Yeah. We were poor. Dude.
Yeah, we didn't either.
I didn't have a Nintendo when it came out, nothing. Yeah. I saved up my money, and anyway, that's another story. But Anyway,
Well,
so you
so this band, yeah. So the band ended up being me and Chris and Wayne and Sean, and then somehow we added another guy named Lee Williams, and he was from Portageville, and Lee was one of the most unique people I had ever met in my life. Especially at that point, I'm 17. I'm still in high school and hadn't really been out to see much. You know, we toured around or traveled around a little bit to some schools in St. Louis with the jazz band from high school, but I didn't really get to go a lot of places. I'd been to Texas and, you know, some Tennessee and things like that with the family, West Virginia. But, yeah, so Lee was kind of unique for this area, especially. He had, he was a little short dude with super long dark hair, had a mustache, and he played a SG that was almost as big as him. That's kind of how tiny he was, stature-wise, and had a big personality, though. And he referred to it as his titty pink SG, and it was pink.
Areola pink.
It was like this. It was such a weird combination to see this little dude playing this big pink SG.
Was it like Pepto-Bismol pink?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and he loved to say titty pink, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so yeah, and
I
man,
can't go wrong with the word titty.
Lee was one of the first people I met that wrote his own songs.
Cool.
And he was a really good songwriter, but he had such a, I guess, I don't know how to. I almost want to say destructive personality, because
was he like self-destructive?
Well, maybe to a degree. Because I just found out a few years ago that he had passed away, and
oh man,
somebody said he killed himself.
Oh
and
man, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I was too. You know, even though he was kind of a, you know, some people would think he was a little crazy, maybe, but I always thought he was a good dude. You know. We rehearsed at his space. He had a shed out behind his parents' house, and we would drive to Portageville and haul my drums over there, and we worked up our tunes, and we played, you know, Guns N' Roses and Talkin.
So what year would this be? About 88?
This was 87.
87.
Yeah, and like I said, I was still in high school. 87 into 88, my senior year, essentially. So, and our first actual gig with that band was called Bone Cold. Sean,
Bone Cold?
Bone Cold.
What is up with the usage of bone?
Yeah, it's been around in this area for quite a while, I guess. But
did you ever tell the guys at Z95 the Bone that story?
No, I never did. And that would be a good one if I ever get to go back on the local thing again with Chris. But our first gig with Bone Cold was at an arcade in Clarkton or Malden. There were two arcades we played at, and one was in Clarkton and one was in Malden. And yeah, we got paid and you know, free sodas. Woohoo!
That had to feel pretty good when you're. How old were you?
I was 17, essentially. Yeah. So yeah, but that was my first real band and my first real gig, I guess you'd say. That became a professional musician, if that's how you want to define it. By you know, made a few bucks. I don't even remember what we made. It may have been something ridiculous like $100 for 5 guys. But at the time, that's a lot of money for 5 guys.
Isn't that the going rate now?
Kind of.
It's pretty close to the going rate now.
Yeah, that's another conversation I had with some local guys I set in with. Is how.
So how long did that band last?
A year or so. Did I just hear a delay? That was weird. It sounded like I went twice. That band lasted probably about a year. And then let's see. I went off to college at SEMO, and then my whole family moved to Florida. And so that took me out of this, you know, for good, or at the time for good. And the whole time I was in Florida, I only met one really good guitar player, and he was really good. He was a smoking guitar player. Knew a lot of Van Halen licks and tricks and the tapping and all that stuff. And his dad was a really smoking bass player and had played with, actually, he told us he played with Joe Walsh at one time. And I think it may have just been a thing where they were at the same place and jammed together. Because it was when Joe was still in Michigan.
Okay.
So, and his dad was old enough that probably would have worked out.
Michigan or Ohio?
I thought he said Michigan. It's been a long time. I
He
don't.
may have jammed. I mean,
It may have been
he
Ohio.
grew up in Ohio.
Oh,
Joe
okay.
Walsh is an Ohio guy.
Oh, okay. Well, didn't he live in Michigan though for a few years when James Gang first started? And
Possibly.
stuff
I think he was actually going to Kent State when the shooting happened.
oh, wow.
And was doing the James Gang then even.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like I said, my memory's not the best these
no,
days.
I mean he may have lived.
But
in Michigan.
he claimed to have jammed with him, so I thought that was kind of cool. But he was a really good bass player, and it didn't seem out of the realm of possibility. But so I jammed with those two guys, the father and son, while I was in Florida, and then we moved back to Missouri. My whole family did, and right back to Campbell and back to SEMO, and I kind of hooked up with some of the same guys, and then Wayne and Sean and I hooked up with Richard Patillo and formed the newest, at that time, and then what turned out to be the final version of a local band that had been around for years called Talkin.
Token.
Smoking with Talkin.
Oh wow. Now was it spelled token like a video game token?
It was when we, in our version, the original version of Talkin was spelled with two K's, like Dockin. But they pronounced it Token, Tokken. And to me, that always seemed odd, just looking at it printed or on a marquee sign.
Even for 1989 or whatever.
Yeah, so we shortened it and took the K out, and it became Token with a Tokken. Because we were trying to, it was a new band, essentially, with just one original guy. So we kind of wanted to pay tribute to it, but it was kind of a new thing, too. And that band played together for a while, and then it...
So what was influencing you at that time, music-wise?
A little bit of everything, because that's something I didn't really touch on before when you were asking about Bonham and stuff. Growing up in my house, with my dad's bands playing, and they, he had a band that had a chick singer, so they did Pat Benatar and all that kind of stuff. But if you look through my parents' record collection at the time, Black Sabbath, Air Supply, Dolly Parton, Johnny Cash, Zeppelin, it had a little bit of everything.
Tell me this.
What?
I was just talking about this with someone the other day. Everybody loves Johnny Cash.
Yeah?
When you were a kid, how many of your peers loved Johnny Cash?
Not a single one of them that I can remember.
Not a fucking one, was there? Not one.
When I was listening to Johnny Cash records, at the house or whatever, or at my grandpa's house even, I was a kid. I was 6, 7, 9, 10, that age. And then I kind of got away from that the more I got into rock as I started to play drums more. So, and then like I was talking about, sitting around with the headphones on, or did I mention that before we started recording? Anyway, that's kind of how I learned to play drums, was listening to all these different records and listening to the radio. And I listened to everything. I listened to Ozzy and Van Halen, but I listened to The Police and The Outfield and Berlin and David Bowie, Wham. Yeah, I listened to pop radio. I listened to rock radio.
Let me tell you something. Wham's rhythm section was beastly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They hired the best musicians that...
Yeah.
Whatever. I think they were on Columbia Records. God, I can't believe I know that. Could put together for those guys, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Pop records have some of the best funk and pop stuff. How much of the obviously in '89, hair metal was ruling the roost. Well, with the exception of Guns N' Roses, I never have thought of them as hair metal, ever.
Huh.
They were more. I never thought of them as hair metal. They were too edgy. They were saying "fuck" and
they had a lot of punk in them.
Yes. Yeah.
They were the punkiest rock band.
Sure. Well, Duff
recall.
McKagan was in the Farts, wasn't he? I'm pretty certain he was in the Farts with a Z.
Know.
Seattle punk band. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
that's cool.
Yeah. So there was punk elements.
Yeah.
And then obviously Aerosmith. Have you ever? I was just listening the other day in the car, back in the saddle, and I was like, "Holy shit! That is the rhythm track for Welcome to the Jungle." I'm back.
Wow, yeah. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I hadn't either.
There's
And
a lot
then-
of things like that kind of.
Well, and here's another
crossover.
one. Me and Jessica, my daughter, were on our way back from Cape day before yesterday. The song Sledgehammer came on. I wanted her to listen to the production to see how it's mimicking or see how today's pop production is starting to sound like that.
Yeah.
It's getting back to being very reverb drenched.
Yeah.
You know, renegade, you know.
Yeah.
And I wanted her to listen to the snare on Sledgehammer.
Yeah.
And I wanted her, and it was how I was describing reverb, and she was understanding. But if you listen to the hi-hats, I always heard superstition in the horns. Do, 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 do.
Yeah.
But the drums, listen to the hi-hats on Sledgehammer.
He's shuffling, yeah. I'm trying to think of who
I
that
swear
is.
to God. And then I saw a mashup on YouTube of Sledgehammer and Superstition.
Oh.
Because they're both in the key of E.
Yeah.
Both about the same damn tempo.
Huh.
It just, yeah, it's odd how much of Superstition is in Sledgehammer, but I didn't catch that when I was 8, 9, 10 years old,
Yeah.
however old I was when that came out.
Yeah.
I just, ooh, this is weird, dancing plucked chicken, you know. And,
Yeah, videos really kind of influence the way you remember a song sometimes, I
absolutely.
think.
When I hear Take On Me, I see that comic book.
Yeah.
You know, that just,
It's the pencils come to life, yeah.
which was a really neat thing.
Oh,
at the
that's
time.
yeah, it was groundbreaking.
It's still
you know?
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still neat.
Well, something. It's amazing that something that has been around that long, in our lifetime, is being homaged and parodied. On
Absolutely.
Family Guy and things like that. You know, so yeah, it had a lasting impact
Oh,
to more
it's-
than just musicians.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, the popular culture of videos. I mean, man, my daughter and your kids, they're missing out on
Yeah.
what MTV had to offer us when we were growing up. I mean, it was kind of a way of living, you know?
yeah,
You went and you played all day, and you come inside, watch some videos, go play some more, come back in. But you always knew when you turned the TV on, there'd be some music, there'd be some videos.
Yeah.
And then they put on the other shows, 120 minutes. Hey, now I can catch these bands that I've heard about in magazines, but never got to hear in Southeast Missouri radio.
Yeah.
That's where I first heard, Meat Puppets and Suzanne Vega or whatever I may have been hearing at the time. Smithereens, yeah.
I can remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, but back to you.
Back to me.
So, when did you get into the sort of Popper Bluff scene? Because I almost think of you now as not even a Campbell transplant anymore. You're just kind of one of the Popper Bluff dudes. Because
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
like I said, I've known you since '94, and
Yeah.
you were living in Campbell. I still think of you a little bit as a Campbell tramp, but
Yeah.
at this point, you're
well,
one of us.
you know, like I said, I'd moved to Florida and we'd come back, and I started playing with Talkin, and then I played in a couple different bands, and then in '89, I guess is when I met Ken Simpson from also from ELB, our third wheel from ELB.
Yeah,
There's only 3 wheels in that band.
damn good band for 3 wheels.
Yeah, exactly. But and then he also plays with Gen X. But I had met Ken.
I think he's been sitting in with Cinderblock too.
Yeah, he has. That's
Yep.
right. But I'd met Ken
Again, if you know the songs, you get the gigs.
Yeah.
If you're a
Exactly.
bass player and drummer. Anyway. Yeah.
Well, anyway, but I met him. He was playing guitar and with Greg Yates. Greg Yates was playing drums. Jim Helly, another buddy of ours, was the singer, and I always forget the bass player's name. Big tall dude. But they played at the Campbell Peach Fair and did a Talkin song, "Alone Again." But so in the midst of it, it's just meeting more musicians. The whole networking and that kind of thing. And
Yep.
so somewhere along the line, there was a band called Apex who played a lot around Popper Bluff and the SEMO area, and they're a pretty hot band and had some really good players and singers. And the main guy that had started that band, Kevin Forster, was Ken's cousin, and he wanted to reform the band, and he had found out about Ken being around and Jim Helly, and wanted to kind of redo the group with these players. And Jeff Chapman was the guitar player in Apex, and so that's when I first met Jeff. So that's how I ended up in Poplar Bluff. I moved up here to live with Jim and Ken, and then ended up playing drums in the reformed Apex. And we got a house gig at the Waikiki, a club that's no longer around, unfortunately, because it was a cool rock club, man. And had a Mexican restaurant up front and good food, and they'd feed us.
I have a good story about the Waikiki.
Really?
Well, it burnt down.
Yeah.
That ended it.
That's a great story.
No. I was in the 10th. I was in the 10th grade when it burnt down.
Wow.
Me and some buddies went and scavenged the burnt beer in there and had a party at my friend Joey Sisson's house.
Oh, that's funny.
With all this burnt beer. I believe it was Joey
beer.
Sisson's house.
Wow, it's a good thing it didn't make you sick or something.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Oh, it did?
Yeah. I mean, I drank a bunch. That was the first night I ever smoked pot.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Well, I played with Apex, and then they booted me out to get Dwayne Marshall back in on drums. And, at the time I took it pretty hard, but, I got over it, and I'm still buddies with Jeff and everybody today.
God, I would hope so. if you held a 26-year
grudge, yeah.
Man, you're one.
No, it was,
you're the Glenn Fry of this area.
It happened, yeah, the Glenn.
God, that motherfucker.
You
can still see the anger in him when he talks about Don Felder. It's like, you bastard,
you
greedy, big head. Literally, his head looks disproportionate to his body these days.
He looks like a bobblehead.
He does. It's like, yeah, you big chump. Fuck, how are you gonna still, like, he almost gets like this lust in his eyes when he talks about his hatred of Don. Anyway, I'm getting the lust in my eyes.
We
digress.
digress.
Disdain
we digress.
No,
but man, I always felt so bad.
I'll tell you, the heat'll be on him if he ever meets me.
The H is O.
The H is O, bitch.
No, I always felt bad when I heard the story of what happened about Waikiki burning, because all of Apex's gear pretty much was in the club. And the cops actually had to restrain Jeff because he tried to run inside the club and get his guitars out.
Oh, man. Yeah. They burn up?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And
God, no.
So yeah, I think they pretty much lost everything. So, and then one thing, and here's this to show how little of a grudge I held at the time from being booted out of the band. Within a couple of weeks of that happening, Talkin, or whatever version of I guess it was that last version of Talkin, we put together a benefit in Malden at a club we played at, and invited everybody from Apex and all the local bands. We ended up having 5 or 6 bands, I think it was, and somewhere in my archives, archives means boxes of junk. I still have the little original flyer that I made for that show.
Oh, how cool.
But Styles was there, Bill Garrett, and those guys, Mark McFeeters, a good buddy of ours. And but yeah, we had a bunch of cool bands and then raised some money for them. And, and that's one cool thing about the musicians around here, like we were talking about earlier, everybody knows everybody. And that's why
we always pull together with them benefits too.
Yeah,
man.
And it's everybody's glad to help support each other when and if we can, so, and so it's cool, man. That's even though we kind of gripe about the venues and what the scene and all that kind of stuff, it's cool how the musicians will pull together and and help out and do for each other and stuff.
I'm just glad to see how many are still working.
Yeah.
Still have gigs. I mean, I'm trying to find something permanent, and I'm not so worried that it can't happen.
Well, and when you talk about that, I don't know that there is such a thing as a permanent gig anymore.
Yeah.
Just because the music business has changed so much, even on a global scale with record companies.
Oh God, yeah.
The digital age and things like that. And that's one reason that I think so many people around here end up playing in different bands with each other. It's like you play with this band for a couple of years, and then somebody decides they want to do something else or whatever. Chris Lovelady, a local guitar player, really good blues picker, was telling me something that Bruce Zimmerman told him a couple years ago, and it's very, very true, and I've seen it many times. The one piece of advice that you can give just about anybody that's ever been in a band or wants to be in a band is all bands break up.
Yep.
I mean, if you think about it, you look at, the Beatles broke up.
Yep.
Aerosmith broke up. But they got back together. But even famous bands break up. So it's an inevitability. You just kind of get in there and do the best you can and ride along as far as you can, I guess.
The main thing is if you've got friends in your band, to be able to maintain the friendships.
Yeah.
You and I have went at it on stage. Well, I've been an asshole on stage, but here you are tonight, next to last day of 2015, laughing,
Yeah.
I think when you take the music serious, you're gonna have some bumps in the road where maybe different ideas of how you want to do the music or how you think the other person should be or whatever the case may be. But I mean, in the end, if you can maintain your friendships, then that's everything. That's way more important than keeping your band together.
Yeah.
Because one day we'll be in an old folks home, and I don't want you slinging shit at me from the bands, So, okay.
Tune that thing!
Tune your guitar! I'll be the guy in the nursing home going, come on, man, let's get the band. Let's play some music.
Let's get out here and rock.
Come on, man, let's get down. So after all of that, then where did it kind of go from there? Because when I met you, I don't know if you were in a band. I don't think you were.
In 94, I don't think I really was. The year before that, let's see, in 90, I think it was 92, somewhere around 92, 93, I ended up moving to Jonesboro, and I became the drummer for Tony Spinner, who is a local legend of sorts. Tony's been around forever. He's originally from Cape Girardeau, but he's lived in Jonesboro for years and had a bunch of great rock bands down in that area. They played Memphis and Little Rock and all over, and actually toured and stuff. And Tony's went on to play with Toto and Paul Gilbert and some other assorted rock luminaries. But so getting that gig was really cool because everybody knew who Tony Spinner was, And so I played in his band for about a year or so, and then I gigged with him off and on over the next few years because he switched the lineup a couple times, and then we ended up with Mark Fender, a really killer bass player from Walnut Ridge, and also did some singing and stuff, and had a cool little three-piece band. And that
did he play a jazz bass or a precision?
He played a jazz bass.
He'd have to with a name like Fender.
Yeah.
How could you not?
How could you not? Yeah.
And you could not play any Ibanez or Washburn or Gibsons.
Yeah. But I credit with Tony with helping me develop my improv chops and my ability to think on my feet when it came to playing live music, because that dude knows a zillion songs. And unless it was something too complicated or not too complicated, but just a different arrangement that you had to really work out, he could call up a song and be like, hey, let's do such and such, but ZZ Top, it's in G, and you were playing ZZ Top in the count of 4.
That's funny.
And you may have only heard that song for 10 years or whatever and never played it before, but by God, when he counted it off, you were playing it. And so that really got me to the point where I could just wing it, and
kept you on your toes.
Yeah, and I started to see, that's when I was getting better as a player because I was playing live a lot, but I started to see how songs were structured and how all the pieces fit together, and I just figured it out on stage. And so I think that's part of what has helped me with all these gigs where I'm the fill-in guy or I'm the guy they call because they know I can cover the gig. It's like I've played enough different styles of music over the years that that I can just do it for the most part. I mean, it's always fun to rehearse and kind of get your show together or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of gigs, like due to the nature of what our music scene is in this area, a lot of it's just playing bar band stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a decent enough player, you can kind of go in and fake some of the standards, as they call them.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Keep your hands to yourself, yeah. But it's another skill that you just learn.
So you played all these gigs with Tony, and it's helped you today. Okay, you're pretty versed in rock and blues, and now you're kind of doing this sort of country thing with Heskett now.
Yeah.
Where did you get in the rehearsal for that kind of stuff, like train beats? And I mean, because that's obviously a totally different thing. It's a totally different animal of drumming.
Yeah.
Before you got on with Heskett here, where did you practice country drums?
Well,
Just sitting at home,
it was part of what I was doing when I was, sitting in the bedroom as a teenager with the headphones on, like I said. But a lot of what I did back then was rock and pop stuff from listening to the radio and records, and there was still a little bit of that influence from because my grandfather played country music and he was into Bob Wells and Texas swing and things like that. So I heard all these kinds of music growing up, so it was in my brain somewhere. But I didn't really get to utilize it until that year '88 when we got ready to move to Florida. My dad went down a few months before us and got a job and found us a place to live. And he was playing in one of the best country bands around at that time, the Dirt Road Express, with Jim and Lisa King. And
I remember hearing about them when, like advertisements maybe on the radio when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Dirt Road Express playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they had sort of a house gig at what was called the Safari Lounge. And when the Call of the Wild was still in business with the stuffed animals and stuff, they had a lounge called the Safari Lounge.
Huh.
And played there. I played there, I guess, Friday and Saturday night. I filled in for my dad with Dirt Road Express for about 3 months before I moved to Florida. And Steve Agee was the guitar player from Dexter Music.
I'll be dang.
Yeah, he was the lead player. Russell Riggs played steel and sang all the Hank Jr. stuff. And Randy Ogden was the bass player. And so it was a pretty versatile group. They had been together, for a few years before that, surely. And
their name was long before there were any bro country songs. About dirt roads.
No.
So if anyone listens, it's not to be confused with Luke Bryan or Jason Aldean or whatever those chodes
I don't even want
singing
to
about.
talk about them.
Hear me on dirt road, baby, 6-pack of beer.
Well, and what's funny is the name Dirt Road Express was revived just within the past couple of years by Cody Mosby and a couple of those guys when they were first starting to back Anna Catherine DeHart. It was going to be Anna Catherine and Dirt Road Express, and then they kind of dropped the Dirt Road Express thing. But they actually went and got the blessing from Jim and Lisa King to use that name. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, they actually went back and asked.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's some serious respect.
But
so
that was my first foray into country music, was playing for my dad for those few months before I moved to Florida. So
I'll ask you like I asked Roger, what are some of the more memorable gigs that you've had? Like, what are some that just stick out? Like, I don't know if I don't want to bring up a bad instance, but got the shit beat out of you in Ellington, which was absolutely ridiculous.
What I can remember of that gig was memorable.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's a story that I don't really tell very often, and I'm not going to rehash it here. That's one that if you want to hear it, come find me at a gig or hanging out at Hayes Music or something, and I'll tell you the story, but I'm not going to go into it here because, not that it's going to horrify me, I'm not scarred by it, but like,
why waste any more time?
Yeah,
on those
why
bastards?
waste any more time? Yeah, because
I'll say it. I'll
put it this way. That happened in 2002, I think. 2000.
It was a while back.
3, and I have never been back to Ellington since, and I don't plan on going back to Ellington. So
yeah, no, I wouldn't either.
So anyway, but and there's been a lot of unique gigs or memorable gigs, I really liked when we played at the coffee shop. Those were always fun gigs.
Those really were memorable. Didn't pay worth a
No,
shit.
yeah, you made tips or whatever.
Might have made 10, but I remember we would play there, make our tips, and be like, all right, let's go to Hardee's.
Let's go to Hardee's,
and spend every last dime we just
spend
made.
what we just made.
But they really were memorable gigs.
Yeah, because you were surrounded by people that wanted to hear you and your friends and stuff like that. So, but I don't know. I've got a fairly unreliable memory because
Boy, me too.
it turns out that there's things that have happened in the past, not bad things or whatever, but like I'll get people that I haven't seen in years that will roll up and be like, hey, remember that time we were hanging out and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I really don't remember that. And it's nothing against the people or the situation. It's just that my memory didn't store it the way other people stores that type of thing. So I may have even forgotten like a really fun gig, but I know that I've had plenty of them.
I've got a memory, and it involves us playing.
Okay.
Most of my music memories will.
Yeah.
We were playing at that Highway W club, and this dude kept coming by going, "You play just like Jimi fucking Hendrix." Woo!" So first set, I'm like, "Oh yeah, thanks." I don't, but thank you. And he does it again. Woo! From then on, he doesn't even just say you play like Jimi. He just says Jimi Hendrix. Woo! About third set, he comes by, Jimi Hendrix. Woo! And we go take a break. And I'm in the bathroom taking a piss, and he's like, Jimi Hendrix, woo! And just proceeds to barf his shoes up.
Oh man!
So that's one.
Well, sounds like he had a good time.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other stuff like that. A couple in Canada that are memorable.
Oh yeah.
Just because playing music in another country is always a trip.
One really cool gig that does stick out is when I played in Apex, that version there in 1990. We got to open for Head East, or what passed for Head East.
Yeah,
the classic rock band at that time, and they had some really good pickers in the band. And I don't know, it was interesting to meet guys that that was what they did. They played music. They were on the road all the time. That was how they made their living. And I had never done anything like that before. I'd played steady gigs, but never really made a living at it. And actually, at that time, I was making a living at playing music because we had the house gig at the Waikiki, and we made enough money that's how I lived. So that's really the first time in my life that I'd ever just made a living playing music. But I always wondered what that was like to go on the road and spend all that time out with guys and doing your thing. So and I'm getting to do a little bit of that with Heskett because we travel around and play out. Like tomorrow we're playing in Oklahoma for New Year's Eve, and so we've traveled out several hours, a few different directions for some gigs and spent the night and all that kind of stuff. And it's always a lot of fun, and it helps hanging out with people that you like to be around because they're all cool guys, and we all get along and have a lot of fun and joke around. So I don't think you could do it if it wasn't that sort of situation, So
yeah, the older I get, the more open I am to playing music with different people too, because I'm a real guarded person. It's like, okay, I'm in my comfort zone. I don't like to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
With playing music with other people, because, like it or not, music is your band, or even for that night, whoever you're playing with, it's a relationship of sorts.
Yeah.
A band is very much like a marriage. I mean, there's a lot of give and take, and you got to think about people. Compromises. Yeah. I mean, you're not. It's not about you unless you're like, okay, I'm a solo artist and I'm hiring you guys to do that. But when it's a legit band, which is my favorite way of making music, is in a band setting.
Yeah.
But man, when it's on, it's great. I mean, it's the greatest feeling in the world, especially when you're on stage and I always try with these podcasts to try to get over to somebody that's not in a band, what it's like to be on stage and what it's like to be in a band, and either the work that goes into it, the joy that comes from it, and just the uniqueness of being up on that stage and doing your thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of a hard feeling or idea to convey to people that have never done it.
Maybe somebody that's done theater, but I mean, we've both done theater and music, and it's still not the same. I mean, especially if I'm doing original music live. I mean, if I do a play, I didn't write the script. I didn't do this. I didn't do the, the screenplay isn't by me.
Yeah.
There's kind of a selfish indulgence in your band presenting a song that you guys put together and then you present it. I say it's selfish indulgent. I don't think it's any different than being an architect and building a building that other people are going to go to and being proud of your building.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of the same way. You without trying to sound all artsy and crags, I can't stand musicians doing that. But without trying to get all too, I'm so important. It is cool to create something, present it to people that want to hear it, or may not even know it's yours, but they're out there dancing. There's a memory for you. The first time we did, we were at the Blue Moon Club, me, you, and Ken, EOB, and we were doing songs from that second EP that we released before we played Bone Stock and all that. It was after it was right before or right after we'd played the Bone Stock thing, and we did like favorite teas, and people got out and they danced. I mean, they packed the dance floor, and it's like, holy cow, guys, that's cool.
Yeah.
Our little piece of music has got people moving and dancing.
Yeah.
And that's a good payoff.
Oh, sure.
But, man, I want to go ahead and... It's been an hour and 16 minutes.
Yeah.
Will you make me a promise that you'll come back and we'll talk more about music and the goings-on of music?
Sure, man.
Awesome. This went on way... fast. It went by too fast.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nostalgic stuff we didn't even get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you would come back, I would appreciate that, and we'll do another podcast.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie, and that's it for this show. For those that stuck with us, thank you.
Thanks. See ya.
And we will be doing it again.
Bye.
Y'all have a good New Year's.